ride the lightning. You know what I'm saying? Just
No.
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 Now, if you were gonna choose,
Oh boy.
choose a way to die, how would you choose?
I don't know.
Statistically, I know the answer. What I would choose.
What would you choose?
Firing squad. It's the only one that has a 0% fail rate.
Oh, like, are we talking just in general, or are we talking like?
Well, it's
How would you want to die? I mean,
it's not like
that's a pretty vague question. We talking like
no, it was okay.
executed?
Yes, by the state, by the government, whatever. Anyway, hello, my name is Fred Stewart, and welcome to Haunts, Graves, and Omens. With me, as always, my lovely co-host.
It's me. It's Taylor. I'll get there.
You're running cameras and sound.
I'm doing my best.
If you want to keep it on your close up real quick.
Sounds good. I can do that.
While I go over here, I'm gonna go.
I don't know what you're doing. Oh, that's what you're doing. Okay, that makes sense. He's coming back. He's working on it. He just didn't want you to see his pants.
Yeah.
They're Barbie pink.
They got skulls on them, dude. I'm wearing pajama pants. Okay. I can't believe you'd even do that. Can't believe you'd even do that to me. Anyway, breaking news short time before us even recording this on the 12th of July. Former President Donald Trump was almost assassinated at a political rally. Information still coming out about it. Not much is known. One shooter is deceased, most likely shot by a counter sniper team with the Secret Service, and one bystander who was watching the rally is also deceased. It is a weird and turbulent time within the country. And here at H.G.O, we don't really stand anywhere politically. But I just hope that the family of the person killed, is, kind of gets, some sort of assistance wise for mental health or, and everything, because watching their loved one get shot and also the former president. Like I said, what me and Taylor were talking about before is like love him or hate him. Like I said, we don't really take a political stance on this show. I'm not really political at all anyways. But no one deserves to get fucking shot, like, for just going out there and running for an office. It's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
People are fucking stupid. Anyway, keep the the vibes low for a second, but also confusing. I got some news stories to talk about.
Sounds good. I'm ready for him.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So, police in London, or the Hertfordshire Police Department or police agency, whatever you call it, London town, issued a statement that a 26-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of killing two sisters and their mother in a reported crossbow attack. Police previously stated that Kyle Clifford was captured on Wednesday following a near day-long manhunt in a cemetery near his home in Enfield. Like Enfield Poltergeist. Around 50 miles from the scene of the crimes. Three women, the family of well-known BBC commentator, were found with serious injuries at their home in a quiet residential neighborhood of Bushy, northeast of the capital. On Tuesday evening, police and ambulance crews arrived on scene. Carol Hunt, 61, and her daughters, Hannah, 28, and Luis, 25, were pronounced dead on the scene in a reported crossbow attack / murder.
Jeez.
Which is fucking insane. That shit went everywhere. Because I was like, I just heard heard about it and I was like, excuse me, you say crossbow murders?
Yeah.
It's wild. And then you also have a story you want to tell, and I have one more story I want to get into.
Do you want to go with yours first?
Oh, sure. Why not? We're already here.
Sounds good.
So This is the most Oregon story. It's from Oregon. It's It's fucking insane. Police in Oregon say they recovered at least $200,000 in stolen Lego pieces after thieves lifted them from a local trailers or retailers and sold them for a fraction of their price tag to other store owner who knowingly scooped them up despite being aware of their origins, reports NBC News. After a Tuesday statement on Facebook, Springfield police of Springfield, Oregon, say the alleged thieves swiped new unopened sets of the toy from nearby Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, and Fred Meyer stores, then immediately went to the Brick Builder store in Eugene, Oregon to exchange the stolen items for cash. When interviewed, some suspects advised that the Brick Builder staff knew that the sets had recently been stolen. The statement notes, adding the police found many of the suspects used the money to buy drugs.
Sounds about right.
It's wild. Yeah. I never thought I never thought I would ever have the day where I'd read that people that are stealing things to buy drugs are stealing $200,000 worth of Legos.
It's a lot of Legos.
It's like 5 boxes.
I started to, in my head, I was like, that's actually not a lot of Legos.
No, I bet if we got the price tags, I bet it's not that much.
It's probably like 5 or 6 boxes, depending on the kind. The type.
I bet it's closer to probably like 30, 40, but
I don't know.
Definitely not 4 or 5. That's insane. $200,000. I think it's a fucking $50,000 Lego set. I don't think so. I don't think there's any $50,000 Lego sets.
Watch there be something really close.
All right, you tell your story and I'll look it up.
All right. We're doing great. This comes from Europe. So, Italian authorities confiscate almost $1 million in fake olive oil.
I'm sorry? In fake olive oil?
Yeah.
Italian authorities are like gabagoo, you got your olive oil license? What?
So, officials in southern Italy have broken up an alleged racket selling fake olive oil. They confiscated 42 tons of the extra virgin variety worth almost $1 million.
That's wild.
There's 7 people in this fake olive oil racket going on.
You know, we were talking about how like the former president almost got assassinated, and this is almost somehow kind of worse.
Pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, so apparently they're accused of criminal conspiracy, adulteration of food substances intended for marketing, fraud in public military supplies, and adulteration of food for export.
Okay.
So
they were conducting raids.
Yeah,
in the Peлагea region, is what it says.
Yeah, so they had search warrants for 18 garages and warehouses. Some of the 42 tons of oil was already packaged, ready for sale. Authorities confiscated 71 tons of what was referred to as, quote, an oily substance.
Okay.
In plastic tanks, as well as 623 liters of chlorophyll, which is a component of extra virgin olive oil that was being added to oil of a lesser value. They found packaging equipment, labels purporting that the oil was extra virgin when it clearly wasn't. And commercial documentation, including 1,145 customs excise duty stamps that are being studied for forgery. They also confiscated 174 bottles of champagne that are also suspected of being fake, that are undergoing testing.
What the fuck is happening? Can you imagine, I imagine some 1950s noir detective being like, about to solve the big case, and they're like, and then like the SWAT team is getting like, they were like stacked. It's like the crazy scene of the SWAT team like bailing out of the van, and they stack up to the door, and they're like, execute, and then they fucking and they pop the door open, and they're like, get the fuck on the ground, and they secure all the guys, and then they're like, all clear, Bravo 2 clear, and then they fucking open the van, it's just full of a bunch of fake olive oil, and they're like, we hit pay dirt, boys. Like, what?
Yeah, so I don't fucking know, man. Apparently in January, they had carried out raids at 50 restaurants in Rome and found seed oil being passed off as extra virgin olive oil, so also fake oil.
That's so funny.
They're fucking on it.
They're serious about their olive oil.
I don't know, man. This is why I'm learning Italian, is so I can go over there and help with the fake olive oil trade.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's not just an excuse to go over there and eat Italian food?
Absolutely not. Can't believe you'd even suggest that.
Cool. While you're solving the dumbest crime to ever exist, I'll be exploring some of the most haunted places of Italy.
Fun fact, I now know how to say that I'm from London, Philadelphia, Rome, and Milan. I'm not from any of those places, but I know how to say I am.
You can just be like, I'm from Philadelphia. How do you say I'm from Philadelphia?
Don't put me on the spot like this.
How do you say it?
Well, Philadelphia is Philadelphia, but with F's. So no PH, just an F. Listen, I'm only on Unit 3 of my Duolingo. Don't ask me a lot of questions.
Totally.
I just finished it today, actually, my Unit 3.
Nice. So. Good job. Very, very proud of you.
I'm doing great.
Man.
I'm ready to go bust some olive oil trees.
Ready to go bust over some olive oil trees.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Great. So are you... Listen, this week's episode's a bit different. All right. For the long-time listeners in the show, if you guys remember, our second episode we ever did was botched executions, where we talked about a whole long list of botched executions, talked about the fail rate of a lot of these executions and how these things are. And this week is kind of this step in the same direction, except it's kind of the step before. It's all about last meals.
Oh.
Talking about last meals. We're talking about stopping the fucking trade of olive oil. And we're going to talk about food. It's going to be a food-heavy episode.
You know? I'll be like...
We're also going to... also, it goes without saying, this episode is what, quote-unquote, like a gold star fucked up episode, because we are going to be talking about horrific crimes. So get your laughs out now. And that's all I had left in the tank, and we'll be able to dive into it. So
I'm ready.
All right. Like I said, we often ponder, if you will, what our last meal would be. What would yours be, Tay? Your last meal?
You know, I don't actually know, but something with real olive oil would be great.
Okay. Mine would be something along the lines of a glass of chocolate milk.
I knew it was going to be included.
Dungeness crab with...
a steak?
Hold on. Time out. Hold on. Dungeness crab with garlic butter. A high-seared steak that was basted with the same butter. That garlic butter. Soak up them flavors. And... no, it's pretty good. I'll take that. And you can fry me.
Listen, I immediately knew
chocolate milk was going to be
chocolate milk was going to be there, and then I also knew that a steak was going to be involved. You could call me a psychic.
Yeah, you could, but you're not. And
I could be.
You're not. What am I thinking right now?
That I'm not a psychic. Was I right?
I was thinking that you're a fucking idiot. So, kinda.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Hey, no one ever said it's an exact science.
It's not a science at all.
No one ever said it's an
Listen,
exact science.
We're going to be doing a whole episode about remote viewing and psychicism with the federal government, and we'll get into that. But so it goes without saying, this episode, like I said, it's going to be a bit dark. And we're going to be talking about death row last meals. So we'll be talking about the individuals who were executed, their crimes, and then their last meals. Pretty much in that order.
Okay.
Are you ready to get into it?
As ready as I can be, I assume.
All right.
You beat me to it.
I did.
I was
quick with it.
I was just about to do that.
The first inmate on our list is a man named Douglas Franklin Wright. And for those of you of an older generation of listeners who live in the Pacific Northwest, you may recognize Douglas Wright, but we'll get into it. Wright was born on March 25th, 1940 in Spirit Lake, Iowa. His father was an alcoholic and his mother was neglectful from childbirth. It's a classic cycle of a killer, of a broken home, not having the stability, right? It's a tale old as time. Mm-hmm. Full of violence, everything. And on top of that, according to psychological reports, Wright endured repeated sexual abuse as a child. Later in life, he became a high school dropout and enlisted in the Marine Corps, but was later dishonorably discharged for sexually assaulting a 5-year-old boy while in California. Wright even admitted to the probation officer at the time that he had sexually assaulted more than 70 young boys up to that point.
Well, it's fucking wild to me.
70. So he's probably in his 20s at this point.
Yeah.
Right?
So that brings him like I don't know, just like how long?
Oh yeah, this is, well, we'll get into it, but this story is insane, this first initial story. And you would think that for someone being convicted as a pedophile, Wright would have been given a heavy sentence and he would rot in prison, but of course, that's not what happens. And in fact, this is the biggest case of just wait, it gets worse. On September 4th, 1969, Wright broke into the home of 71-year-old Margaret Rosenberry, right here in Portland, Oregon. He was a friend of her family and was well known to them. Upon entering the home, Wright murdered Margaret and her 27-year-old granddaughter, Gail Snelling. Armed with a pistol, he killed Snelling via 2 gunshot wounds to the head and then fatally shot Rosenberry 3 times. He then abducted Snelling's 5-year-old son, taking him to several motels in the area where he sexually assaulted him. Wright, for reasons I don't know, and it just kind of just shows his mental psyche at this point, ended up releasing the boy at some point during the manhunt. This manhunt lasted for over a month in the state of Oregon. Lasted for a month in the state of Oregon, but was eventually captured in Banks, Oregon, after shooting a man at a local billiards hall. It's the only way he was captured. To try to kill somebody else.
The fuck?
Mm-hmm. He was later convicted for the murder of Snelling and Rosenberry and sentenced to 35 years in prison. When questioned why he committed the murders, his answer, in my opinion, allows us to look at his mental psyche. Wright said that his reasoning behind committing the murders is that, quote, he always wanted a son.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And I wish that I could sit here and tell you that he was later executed and would go on to his last meal. But as I said before, it only gets worse. Yes. Despite committing a horrific double homicide as well as committing other horrible acts, Wright was considered a model prisoner by the Oregon State Penitentiary.
Great.
So much of a model prisoner that he was paroled in 1982. Let's run that back. He was paroled from prison after committing fucking murder. Double homicide, almost triple homicide, kidnapped a kid, and is a convicted pedophile. They let him out.
And they were like, you know what? Probably won't do it again.
Honestly, that's what I think that they were thinking, which is fucking absurd.
There's no fucking reason.
Well, this guy has a history of sexual violence and other types of violence.
I don't think he'll do it again.
I don't think. Listen, everyone knows that once somebody kills somebody, they never do it again.
Serial killers don't exist.
No, definitely not.
Granted, they released them in 89?
84?
84?
Or 82. He's paroled in 82.
Tracks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, tracks. I'm not surprised.
Totally.
That they were in the 80s and they were like, I think we should let him out.
Yeah, for fucking real. Almost immediately upon his release,
Of course.
he committed several armed robberies, threatening to kill anyone in his way. 2 years later, on May 23rd, 1984, Wright abducted 10-year-old Luke Treadway from Portland, Oregon. He grabbed Treadway off the streets as he walked home from a friend's house. He then drove Treadway back to his apartment and sexually assaulted him for the next 36 hours. He murdered Treadway at dawn on May 25th, fatally shooting him 6 times. Wright then disposed of the body, and the case went unsolved for 12 years. In 1984, Wright was arrested for the armed robberies and sentenced once again to 30 years in prison.
Let me guess, he doesn't stay in
You're
prison.
going to be even more pissed when I tell you that he was released from prison again in June of 1991. They let him out again.
You know, he's not going to do it a third time. I mean, he's probably fine.
No, definitely not. Definitely not, right?
Great.
Wrong. In October of 1991, Wright advertised to work with the homeless men in Portland, offering them $10 an hour to clear brush at a youth camp. On October 20th, the 2 homeless men, 26-year-old Randy Scott Henry and 31-year-old Anthony Sean Tony Nelson, nicknamed Tony, accepted Wright's offer for work. Wright drove them out of Portland to a remote area on the Warm Springs Indian Reservation and brought them food. He then drove out to the desert and offered them alcohol. As the men drank the alcohol, Wright fatally shot Nelson in the head with a pistol. Henry jumped out of the car and escaped while Wright fired at him. Henry managed to get to the highway and return to Portland, where he alerted the police. Henry and another witness led the police straight to Wright, and he was apprehended. It was later learned that Wright had killed 3 more people in similar fashion to Nelson. The victims identified were 27-year-old Anthony Baker, 23-year-old William Marks, and 37-year-old William Davis, all murdered in October of 1991.
So, I was thinking about it. The second time he was released, and you said that the murder, like, went unsolved for years. They didn't, like, think, we just let this convicted...
No, they definitely did not.
Pedophile and murderer out of prison.
You're looking.
Couldn't be him, though.
No, definitely not.
So fucking dumb.
Yeah. All 3 victims were homeless men whom Wright had lured to a remote area in Wasco County on the Warm Springs Indian Reservation with a false promise of work. He then murdered each of them by fatally shooting them in the back of the head with a pistol. He was later convicted in Wasco County on all 3 of these murders. And finally, on October 11, 1993, Wright was sentenced to death.
Fucking thank you.
Waiving his right to appeal the decision, effectively speeding up the process. We then jump forward to September 6, 1996, the day of the execution. Per Wright's last meal, he had requested a single honey bun.
What the fuck?
That's it. Single honey bun.
He seems like the type to just eat a single honey bun.
Yeah. Shortly after, he was brought into the death chamber and executed via lethal injection. To this day, Wright remains the first of only 2 people executed by the state of Oregon since the resumption of the death penalty in the state. In the end, Wright had killed 7 people, ranging from 10 years old to 71 years old. Rest in piss, you piece of shit.
It's fucking wild that the state of Oregon was like, he's not going to do it again.
Oh, totally.
And then he does it again, and they're like, what are the chances he does it a third time?
What's even more insane is, like, you'll see, well, as previously stated, Wright was the first of only 2 people executed by the state of Oregon since the resumption of the death penalty, right? Yeah. As for the other individual, we're about to get into it. Oh. Pretty short, actually. On June 5th, 1992, Henry Charles Moore shot and killed Thomas Laurie via gunshot wounds to the face and the front of a Salem, Oregon post office. After shooting, Moore drove to the home of Barbara Cunningham, shot her in the abdomen, and then fired 3 more rounds into her head. Cunningham was Moore's half-sister, and Thomas Lawyer was her former husband. Moore stated that he had killed them because he thought that they would move to Las Vegas with his estranged wife and his baby daughter, exposing them to a life of prostitution and drugs.
And he gets the death penalty for this?
For a double homicide, yes. Versus the other guy who killed all those people. But I gotta remember at the time, I don't think prior to his first conviction for Wright, I don't think the death penalty was on the table yet.
Fucking should have been.
Well, I think it hadn't resumed yet.
It just didn't exist.
It didn't exist yet. I mean, they had stopped it at some point, and then they brought it back, and they were like, let's kill this guy first.
They brought it back probably specifically for him.
Probably, yeah. So, probably. So you can see, like, it took this long period for Wright to be executed by the state, right?
Yeah.
Moore was pretty much immediately sentenced to death in late June of 1992.
Oh, my God.
He also stated that he would sue anyone who attempted to try and stop his execution. He also appealed to the Oregon Supreme Court to drop the automatic appeal sentence. Moore's last meal consisted of the following: 2 green apples, 2 red apples, 1 blue fish, 1 red fish, a tray of fresh fruit, and a 2-liter bottle of Diet Coke. Or 2 2-liter bottles of Coke. So they wanted a lot of soda, wanted some apples, and some fruit. That's all I wanted.
All of that is very odd, but all I can think of is... Have you seen the video? I think you've showed it to me before, but I just saw a video recently. The man juggling the fruit and taking bites out of it.
Yes. Do you think you wanted to show the warden a trick? He's like, check this out.
He's like, listen.
Fucking the funniest thing I've ever seen.
If I do a cool enough trick, does that get me more food? Like,
no.
Does that give me another apple?
No. Just prior to the execution, Moore asked the warden if he could, quote, borrow the keys to the prison, promising that he would, quote, bring them right back. The request was denied.
If I show you a really cool trick, will you give me the keys?
Yeah. You notice how I said, like, the request was denied, but not obviously denied? You notice that? Yeah. Especially regarding the last story, because I feel like the last story, the Wright would have been like, could I have the keys? And the warden's like, sure, bud. Fucking toss him. He's like, I want keys in my house and my truck, too. But regardless, Moore was put to death on May 16, 1997 by lethal injection. So, he's also dead.
Good.
Continuing on, I just want to bring up John Wayne Gacy. If you don't know who John Wayne Gacy is, John Wayne Gacy, a.k.a. Pogo the Clown, killed 33 young men in Norwood Park Township near Chicago, Illinois. His story has been told time and time again, and I feel like we've told it on H.G.O, but I can't remember. I think we were going to do it, but we never did.
I was going to ask you if we've covered it because I feel like it's something we would have covered, but also we may not have.
I feel like it was a story that we were going to cover, and then we didn't because I think we were covering something else, and then we just forgot. But
honestly, probable,
yeah. While his story has been told time and time again, his last meal was one for the books. Gacy chose for his last meal a dozen deep-fried shrimp, a bucket of KFC chicken, French fries, a pound of fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke because he was trying to watch his weight.
Honestly, that's how you do. If you're gonna
just go big.
Yeah, if you're on death row, might as well go for it. Versus 4 apples, a tray of fruit, and something else.
Some Coke. It's Coca-Cola.
2 liters of Coke. Listen.
Yeah.
You might as well go all out.
Uh-huh.
With a bucket of KFC chicken, a dozen.
It is a vibe.
Shrimp and some Diet Coke.
We should have a fun little HGO dinner party where we get people in from the, like, we just do like an event, like HGO dinner party last meal, but we have killers last meals.
Oh.
And just be like, we're about to have a lot of chicken in these stories.
Also a lot of apples.
A lot of apples. There's a whole, we'll get into it. There's a lot of weird shit in this fucking story. Speaking of more infamous people, one that we've actually covered, Timothy McVeigh,
Oh.
Oklahoma City bomber.
Yeah.
For his last meal prior to him getting taken to the fucking Old Smoky was the request of 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream as his final meal.
Okay, that's not how you do it.
That's honestly, man, if they're like, because like a lot of prisons when they do last meals, I found out they have a budget, right?
Yeah.
It's like nothing past a certain thing, and if you're like, I mean, maybe just throw like a little pizza and ice cream party, you know, for you and the guards.
You're like, listen, we're gonna have a pizza party, and the slices are gonna be this big.
And he's like, maybe let me go, maybe let me go, and they're like, no.
He's like, but I got the little ice cream cups with the wooden spoons.
Good, perfect. We'll be able to shove that in your mouth as you're being electrocuted to death.
I got us the fun ice cream, and you can't do me a solid?
By letting you out and committing another act of domestic terrorism? No.
I'm not gonna do it.
Well, if Oregon showed us anything, you're right.
Yeah.
Fucking bunch of fucking idiots.
Yeah.
As for our next killer, this one has a very unique request for a final meal, but we'll get into it. James Edward Smith, born October 19, 1952 in Jefferson County, Kentucky. Later in his life, he worked as a tarot card reader in New Orleans, Louisiana, and then later worked as a taxi driver in Houston, Texas. Try to find a little bit more about this guy. It was kind of a weird, hazy, not a lot of information. It felt like it was kind of sporadic. But on May 7, 1983, Smith approached the teller's window at the Union National Life Insurance Company in Houston, Texas. Armed with a handgun and wearing a stocking mask, Smith slid open the glass and pointed the weapon at the teller, ordering her to hand over all the money. When she refused and hid behind the filing cabinet, Smith turned his attention to 44-year-old Larry Don Rojas, the company's district manager, who had been standing with her. Rojas complied with Smith's demands and retrieved money from the cash drawer, which he then handed over to Smith in a plastic bag. Rojas walked away. As Rojas walked away, Smith ordered him to return to the window. While the two engaged in a conversation, Rojas pleaded with Smith not to shoot him and began taking off his bracelet off his wrist. Smith then fired 2 shots, with the second hitting Rojas in the upper left side of the chest. Rojas was rushed to the hospital, was pronounced dead a few hours later. Smith fled the building on foot and was chased down by 2 office workers. Guy just fucking killed a guy. 2 office workers are chasing him down. They ran through a field and then into a apartment complex where Smith opened fire on his pursuers. As he left the complex, he tripped over in the street and was subdued by several people chasing him. Not great.
No.
Beating the fuck out of him. You know, they're kicking the shit out of him, right?
Yeah.
And a police detective happens to be passing by, sees all these people beating the fuck out of this guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I'll go check that out, I guess. Goes over and he handcuffs him. And they found the money and they found the gun located in the field. It was pretty much immediately arrested.
Well,
Yeah.
kind of what you get, my friend.
It's awesome. It's like just the most immediate karma of him being like, it's also just super Texas. Like, only thing was missing was a dude on horseback with a lasso. Just be like, and like pulls him in.
Yeah.
And he's like, got a Lone Star on, you know? It's like, hey, Lone Star Ranger. It's like, wherever I'm always on horseback. Day or night, bad. I don't care. You know how hard it is to camp in a sleeping bag with a horse? Big tent. Or a small horse. Smith was originally scheduled for execution on May 11, 1988. He was quoted saying, life is temporary. Life is a temporary situation. The spirit moves on. Death is like eating a prune in the morning. It is a natural function. The day before his scheduled execution, Smith requested his last meal of, I'm going to fucking butcher this, and I do apologize, but there's a different term for it, but this is the Rekia Kunda dirt, a.k.a. grave dirt.
What the fuck is
It is
that?
is used in a lot of voodoo practices.
So he just ate grave dirt?
He was requesting grave dirt. The request was denied by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice because dirt was not included on the approved foods list. So no dirt for you. They instead he would be given something off the regular prison menu. According to Texas A&M University soil experts, the dirt was believed to be used to be eaten in voodoo rituals, which Smith practiced and believed in. Smith had hoped to perform a voodoo ritual that he believed would assist in his reincarnation, but he was escorted to the death chamber. As he was escorted to the death chamber, he was granted a stay of execution.
Why?
Just government being the government. Governor calls, stay of execution. You're not going right now.
That's so weird.
It's a whole thing. In any case, 2 years later, he was executed by the state of Texas once again after being denied for his dirt and instead received a cup of yogurt.
You know what they should have given him? Is the, kids usually get it. I don't remember what it's called. It's like pudding with cookie crumbles and the little gummy worms.
Oh my God.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, no, exactly what you're talking about.
I just don't remember what it's called, but that's what they should.
You think he was just sitting in a cell knowing that he was about to get taken to the chair, and then he's just fucking yogurt. Fucking bland ass yogurt.
They couldn't even
licking the floors, being like, tastes just like dirt.
I think they missed out on a good opportunity to give him. I think they're called mud pie or whatever.
Yeah.
Or dirt cake. I don't remember what it's called, but you know what I mean.
I sure do. I know. Keeping with the minimalist trend, we continue with Robert Anthony Buell. Is it Buell? Yeah, Buell. Looks like that's how that's pronounced. Convicted for the murders of 2 young women in the early 1980s. This guy was a huge scumbag, and I'm glad that he's fucking dead. Anyways, for his last meal, he requested a single unpitted black olive. That's it.
Unpitted?
Unpitted.
Ugh. Kind of fucking psychopath.
Well, unpitted, not having the pit in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like how most black olives are in a can.
Oh, I was thinking he requested it be pitted. Sorry.
No, that's incorrect.
That would be psychopath behavior. But also a single olive?
Yes.
Also psychopath behavior. Listen, I like olives. I don't want it to be my last meal.
No, definitely not. And it's funny that you say that, because this next story is one of those where you go, if I had a nickel for every time someone chose that, I would have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Oh, boy. Is it another olive?
Victor Harry Fugger, born sometime in 1935. He was a drifter native to the state of Michigan. In the summer of 1960, Fugger drove to Dubuque, Iowa. Sorry, Iowa. I don't know how to say that fucking name. Renting a room at a decrepit boarding house. Soon after rising, Fugger began phoning physicians alphabetically from the local Yellow Pages and found Dr. Edward Bartels. Fugger claimed that a woman needed medical attention. When Dr. Bartels arrived, Fugger kidnapped and killed him in Illinois. Bartels' body was found in a cornfield there with a single gunshot wound to the head. A few days later, Fugger was arrested in Birmingham, Alabama, after trying to sell Dr. Bartels' car to James B. Alford, who tipped that off to the FBI.
Yeah.
Alford later told local newspaper that he suspected Fugger was a crook because he had an out-of-state car but no title papers.
Well.
Yeah. So that was the defining factor for him. Authorities believe that Fugger had kidnapped and killed Dr. Bartels in order to gain access to any drugs that Bartels may have carried to treat patients. Because Fugger transported his hostage across state lines, the federal government gets involved.
Yeah.
And they charge him with the murder. And during his defense, Fugger claimed a drug addict from Chicago, whom Fugger met in Dubuque, had actually accidentally murdered Bartels. Fugger had said that he killed the drug addict and dumped his body in the Mississippi River. However, authorities found no evidence to support this other person even existed. Fugger was tried and convicted in a federal court for these crimes. He was sentenced to death, obviously. Fugger submitted an appeal, which was denied. At the time, only President John F. Kennedy could have commuted the death sentence because it was a federal death case. Only Kennedy, so you just had to call him and be like, oh, let that man go. Let him out of here.
I assume he didn't do that.
No, of course not. He was too busy getting some crazy top in the fucking Oval Office.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
That's the best Marilyn Monroe impersonation I've ever heard.
It's almost better than my John F. Kennedy impression. So I was Governor Harold Hughes, an opponent of the capital punishment, along with Fugger's attorney, contacted Kennedy to request clemency for Fugger. Kennedy thought the crime was so brutal that he denied the request. So Kennedy actually fucking responds, and he's like, nah. You're going.
Bye.
You know you're a scumbag when a Kennedy doesn't like you, you know? That's fucking, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, choosing the method of lethal injection, Fugger went minimal with his last meal. He requested a single pitted olive.
Oh, great. Great. Fucking psychopaths.
Yeah, totally.
Were they just like, I don't want to be too full for
He's like, I'm trying to watch my figure.
I just don't want to be too full.
And they're like, cool.
Basically.
Turn on the pumps.
Yeah. Like.
No. So he requested the olive, stating to the guards that he hoped an olive tree would sprout from his grave as a sign of peace after his death. Now, realizing that they empty your stomach contents post-death when they do your autopsy.
Also, it's an unpitted olive.
It's a pitted olive.
Oh, it is. That one's pitted.
Yeah.
Okay. The other one was unpitted.
Yes.
Got it.
That's correct.
I'm trying my best to follow along here. There's a lot of information, and I'm kind of dumb.
In case you're wondering, there is no olive tree in the prison cemetery. Because that's not how that works. As for our next killer, their last meal was something that I would consider at one time a almost weekly meal for me.
Okay.
So their last meal was basically what I considered almost a weekly meal for me for at least some point in my life. But anyway, John Albert Taylor, born June 6, 1959 in Ogden, Utah, to Albert and Gayleen Taylor, who separated during his infancy. He moved several times during his youth, including a move to Colorado at the age of 9 when he was told that his father had died. According to Taylor, he was raised in Florida, where he was abused as a child and became involved with drugs as a teen. Taylor stated that he did not get along with his stepfather, a Vietnam veteran, or his mother, but she could never control. Quote: she could never control me. My mother had a lot of animosity towards my father. They alienated me. They alienated me for a long time. I was the whipping post. At age 13, he stabbed his stepfather. According to court records, he repeatedly sexually assaulted his sister in his teens, and sexually assaulted a whole bunch of other young women while in his teens. And by the time he was 18, he was on the sex offender register program.
Great.
They're like, this kid is gonna turn out great. Just lock him up. Just leave him in there. Leave him in there.
Might as well.
Leave him in there. In 1977, Taylor was arrested in Florida and charged with battery and carrying a concealed weapon after he was caught with a stolen gun. He was convicted and imprisoned until December of 1981, when he was released on parole. In March of 1982, he was arrested in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for armed burglary, armed robbery, and sexual assault. He had been diagnosed at the age of 17 as a, quote, remorseless pedophile. He was acquitted of the charges in September of 1982, but was sentenced to 15 additional years in prison for parole violations. In 1989, Taylor was released from the released and departed for Utah to be with his sisters and biological father, who he was discovered was actually still alive.
Oh.
Mom lied to him, saying his dad was dead. His dad was still alive. Quote, "From all I saw, my father was a good man, but while I was growing up, I was told so many stories about him that I have come to learn were all lies. My father was being painted a villain when he wasn't really one. I've come to learn that the real villain was my mother," and that was a quote by John Albert Taylor. But the real villain is John Albert Taylor. Around 2:30 p.m. on June 23rd, 1989, Sharon King returned from work to her apartment in Washington Terrace, Utah, to find the body of her daughter, Carla, in the bedroom with a nightgown wrapped around her head. After calling the police, she was instructed to perform CPR and discovered that she had been strangled to death with a telephone cord. Horrific murder.
Yeah.
So, when prosecutors believe that Taylor had entered the house with the intent of sexually molesting the girl, when she caught him in the house, prosecutors believe he chased her in the bedroom and then murdered her. On June 25th, a tipster, who was later revealed to be Taylor's sister, Lori, contacted Washington Terrace police officer Marcia Gathercole with information connecting to the murder. Taylor's fingerprints were found on the telephone in the King residence and matched the records provided by authorities in Fort Lauderdale. He was arrested at about 9 p.m. on June 28th at the home of his half-sister, and I'm sorry, this is about to be an insane statement. He was arrested at the home of his half-sister / incestuous lover, Tressa Taylor, in Ogden, Utah, and charged with first-degree burglary, first-degree child rape, first-degree murder the next morning.
Jesus.
So, fucking going down.
Yeah. No.
Taylor had arrived from Florida 4 days before the murder and had been staying in a complex with another sister in the same apartment complex. The case automatically appealed to the Utah Supreme Court, which upheld Taylor's conviction and sentence. And in October 1901, Taylor's execution was initially scheduled for June 15th, 1992. The date was scheduled to June 24th when Taylor's attorney, Martin Gravis, requested to withdraw from the case. He was like, "I'm fucking out of here. Don't want anything to do with this guy."
Fair.
On June 17th, Judge Roth, which is a fucking cool judge name, Judge Roth, just has the fucking guitar rip from like F-150, like Ford commercials. Like Judge Roth, you're going to the chair. Anyway, but they had filed all the right appeals, and Judge Roth granted a stay of execution after Taylor's new defense attorney, Ron Yenkin, requested more time to prepare an appeal. At issue was the new 1992 law in Utah that established a sentence of life imprisonment without parole. When incarcerated at the Utah State Prison, Taylor kept busy in effort to overcome his claustrophobia and boredom. Boo fucking who. He graduated from high school, got his high school diploma, and studied to be a paralegal until his educational money ran out. In October 1995, Taylor decided to end further appeals after the Utah Supreme Court rejected his argument that his legal counsel was ineffective. He fired defense attorney Ed Brass, stating, "If I don't fight for my appeal, I don't need an attorney." Taylor said that he was prepared to die partly because of his failing health, including enlarged heart, bleeding ulcers, and swollen legs and feet.
Boo-hoo.
Yes, boo-hoo. So, Judge Roth ordered Taylor to choose a method of execution, And Mr. Taylor decided to choose the only method of execution that has 100% death rate. Has no history of failures.
You already said what it is. Firing squad.
Firing squad. Death by firing squad. Taylor chose to be executed by firing squad to make the process more difficult for Utah state officials. In an interview with the Desert News, he stated, "I didn't commit the murder, and I'm not going to submit to them letting them kill me on that table." Quote, "I don't want to be go flipping around like a fish out of water on that table," talking about the botched executions that happened time before that.
That's fair.
And death by firing squad is fucking the most efficient. To be strapped to a table injected full of drugs leaves me with the feeling of helplessness because I'm innocent of a crime which I was convicted of. Anyway, if my execution is to be carried out, it will be murder. No, it's not. You're convicted murderer. It's obvious. Granted, it may be legally sanctioned out, but nonetheless, murder will be. The firing squad, my way of showing that point, because the cost and the inconvenience it will cause the state, because they are not really prepared for an execution by firing squad. He did it just to be a fucking scumbag. Scumbag till the end.
So, with executions and things like that,
Yes.
like, do they have a list of ones that they do, or is any?
Essentially, yes. They'll go, and like some states do different things.
Yeah.
Like Texas has the death by hanging. I think they also do lethal injection and gas chamber and electrocution.
They don't do firing squad?
No, only sir. It's really weird the way it's not like a federal like everybody does this thing, you know.
Texas doesn't do firing squad?
I don't know off the top of my head, but
I feel like they kind of have to.
I don't know. Maybe it's something you can look up. See if Texas has a firing squad execution method.
Yep.
Because every state is different in the way they do their executions. A lot of states will be like it's either hanging or lethal injection.
Yeah.
Pick one or the other. And the obvious answer is hanging. For that. Lights out, you're done. Because now there's science to it.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's not like that's not the 1910s where they just used the same amount of rope and people's heads popped off. Which, if I'm going to be a spectator at a fucking, at an execution, especially back in the 1800s, man. You bring the whole... We talk about this on the second episode. Like, bring your whole fam, dude. You set up. And you're like, whoa. Splash some. Anyway.
So Texas does not, which is shocking to me, because it's Texas. But only... Let's see here. Can I count? 6 states do firing squad.
Yeah.
Idaho, Mississippi, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Utah.
You know what else is shocking?
What?
Old Smoky in Huntsville, Texas, at their execution chamber. Old Smoky's the name of their electric chair. So.
It's true.
And I've actually I've got to see the previous Old Smoky in person. Got to touch it. It was gross.
I believe it.
Had finger grooves in it.
Ew.
People getting fried.
Yeah.
Anyway, Museum of Death, Los Angeles, California. Go check it out. For his last meal, Taylor, like I said, ordered a meal that I was like, this is pretty much exactly what I would pick on a Friday night, which was a large ambassador pizza with thin crust, onions, mushrooms, hot pepper, sausage, pepperoni, ham, and extra cheese. He also asked for a Coke. And when Taylor ordered a last meal of pizzas with everything, some law enforcement veterans recalled that was the same request by Barton K. Kirkham, the last man to be executed by Utah. On top of him getting a pizza, Coca-Cola, he also requested a cigarette. So he eats this big pizza, drinks all this soda, smokes a cigarette, and he's like, let's fucking go.
Can't say I blame him.
No. God, can you imagine being in prison for years, and then you haven't had a cigarette in that long, and then you just get this crazy head rush, and then you're like, well, time to go die. And it's like, oh, it's about to be the biggest rush ever.
Right.
Like, as he's getting shot, he, like, bites the fucking bead in his like, Camel Crush. Like fucking minty, dude.
I have to battle. The dog is laying directly on the cord to my mic.
Of course.
So I can't relax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On January 25th, 1996, Taylor spent his final evening sharing his pizza with his uncle, Gordon Lee, while being joined by former attorney Ed Brass and Catholic priest Reyes Rodriguez, who administered his last rites. Taylor, whose stomach had been in flip-flops earlier in the day, requested an antacid medication and declined Deputy Warden Wally Schulzen's, I'm going to butcher that, offer for more pizza, soda, and coffee. He gave his glasses to Warden Hank Galetka and said there's no need for them. Taylor refused an offer to be sedated before his execution and was allowed to have his first cigarette in 6 years. 5 police officers who volunteered to carry out execution were each paid $310.10.
Okay.
Yeah. Here you go. Here's your $300. The shooters used identical Winchester Model 94 rifles. One prison official selected each rifle at random from a table and handed them to another prison official sitting in a small room out of sight. The second prison official would then load the rifle and return it to the table. 4 of the rifles were loaded with live ammunition. One was chosen at random to be loaded with a wax bullet, so that none of the officers could be certain they had fired a deadly shot.
Makes sense.
Yes. The non-lethal charge was tested to ensure that the report and recoil was difficult to distinguish from those of the real charge. Isn't that fascinating?
It is fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Would you do that for $310?
Kill a guy who was like a fucking habitual rapist and murderer?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
When was this?
That was in the 90s.
90s?
Mm-hmm.
$310 from.
You gonna do some math?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, while you do some math, for our second to last meal, we were heading out of the States and going back in time to 1902 Germany.
Oh. It's almost $500.
Shit, dude. Buy a whole car back then with that much. You know? So, 1902 Germany,
Yeah.
The Kaiser, they started to get warmed up. They were getting ready for World War II. It's coming. Or World War I. It's coming. What happened in World War I, say?
That's not a fair fucking question because I don't know anything about history.
Yeah, I know. Matthias Knessel, born August 4th in 1875 as the eldest of 6 children of a poor innkeeper. In 1886, his parents, who were later described as having unknown origins and as ill-tempered, purchased the mill in, oh my God, Sozelmoos Satcher. Jesus Christ. The mill was a, quote, strategically remote location and was often used in the secret meeting place for local criminals.
Oh.
When he was 12 years old, a school report card about Knessel, quote, stating that he is not totally devoid of gifts, but he is lazy beyond imagination. He never pays attention. His output doesn't exist, and it is useless to scold him or punish him. He has no love for school whatsoever.
Okay.
Just school's not for him, but so far, he's not a crazy kid. Just doesn't like school. Knessel then began accompanying his brothers at an early age while poaching. At age 16, he was in prison for the first time because members of his family were suspected in cattle raiding.
Oh.
His father was arrested for plundering the pilgrimage shrine of Hergatsura at Friedberg in 1892 and died soon after while in police custody in the town of Dachau. Soon after, Knissel's mother, who was also arrested in prison for poaching, and her sons began to skip school in favor of similarly poaching instead. 6 years after his sentence, he was arrested in February of 1899 and worked as a carpenter at the Numdorf am Inn. After 6 months, Knissel was dismissed by his masters because his colleagues refused to work with him any longer. Due to his bad reputation, it was hard for him to find a job. For 2 years, Knissel was pursued by law enforcement. After his accomplices were arrested, he continued committing armed robberies on his own. He was just committing armed robberies pretty much nonstop.
Ooh.
That's what it kind of got him into. He started a team. An attempt to arrest him occurred on November 30th in 1900, and Erkenburn Altomunster. In a massive gun battle, 2 policemen were injured so badly that they subsequently died.
Jeez.
3 months later, in March 1901, Knissel was captured by 60 law enforcement officers while hiding in a town.
Oof.
They went in deep, and they're like, we're coming. They're coming in deep. They're coming in deep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just trying to make an inappropriate joke. Anyway, during the preceding gunfight, Knissel was seriously injured by a bullet to the abdomen, but survived.
Okay.
So, that's great.
I figured he survived, considering he's in this story.
Maybe his last meal was when he was dying.
His last meal was the bullet.
Yeah. Between November 14th and November 19th, 1901, Knissel was placed on trial in Augsburg. He was charged with 2 murders, attempted murder, as well as armed robbery and extortion. At his trial, which was followed by the media and great attention, Knissel said, as my bad luck would have it would have to go back to the same school right up to my 17th year, just because Pastor Endel could not stand me and kept harassing me. Many of my friends left school long before I learned as much as the others. For the final exams, I was the only one to do the calculation on the blackboard. I did not want to do it. I did not accept unfairness. I will not bow even if it kills me.
What the fuck?
I don't know. He's fucking crazy.
Yeah. I don't know what he's going on about.
Yeah. Knissel confessed to most of the charges, but denied the intent to kill the 2 police officers who were shot by him. However, the court found him guilty of murder, premeditated bodily harm with fatal consequences, extortion, and aggravated robbery. The court sentenced him to receive the death penalty for the murder and 15 years imprisonment on the other charges. Sentence on a Monday, Knissel allegedly remarked, well, that's not a good way to start a week.
Jesus.
Just being a smartass.
Yeah.
Like I hate Mondays.
Yeah.
Classic, dude. Judge Rebholz appealed the letter of the Ministry of Justice, which confirmed Knissel's death sentence. Knissel was awakened shortly after 7 o'clock in the morning on February 21st, 1902, but not before receiving his last meal of 6 glasses of beer. Very German.
Yeah, no, I guess.
6 glasses of beer, please. They gave him 6 glasses of beer, and then they're like, you feeling good? Feeling good? And he's like, oh yeah, I feel good. And they're like, perfect. And then they executed him via guillotine.
Jesus.
Which is fucking wild.
That's also not like the worst way to go out.
Via guillotine?
Yeah.
It's pretty bad if it goes wrong.
Well, yeah, but...
Gets halfway through, you're still alive, they fucking pull it back up.
It doesn't go horribly wrong often.
No. I mean, it does, but not anymore, because they don't do it anymore.
I don't know.
The last time anybody was executed via guillotine was in France in 1970.
Makes sense that the French did that.
There's photos of it. None of them like cutting the dude's head off, but the dude being in the guillotine.
You threw me for a loop. I was like, there's photos of the execution?
Probably.
Maybe.
Just probably. But yeah, I was like, it's very weird because they could see all like they see like cars and shit in the background.
So weird.
And they're like, oh, those are 1970s cars.
It seems like a very French thing to do, though.
Yeah. Versus like they get like a stale baguette and then they just beat him to death with it. But this is Germany. Very different.
I mean, yeah, it's true.
As for our final death row meal, it is the largest death row meal I have ever heard of.
Okay.
And the story is nothing but horrific.
Oh boy.
They've all been really bad. This one's really, really bad.
Ooh.
And this guy's obviously a scumbag from getting to the end.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get any better when it gets to his last meal.
Great.
But we'll get into it. We will be focusing around a man named Lawrence Brewer, who was convicted over the murder of James Byrd Jr. And Mr. Brewer's final meal. But we're going to dive into the case as well. James Byrd Jr. was born May 2nd, 1949, Jasper County, Texas, the third of 9 children to Stella Mae Sharp and James Byrd Sr. His mother was a Sunday school teacher, and his father was a deacon at the Greater New Bethel Church. Byrd graduated from Jasper High School in 1967, the last segregated class. After graduating from high school, he got married, had 3 children. He worked as a vacuum salesman. James Byrd Jr. was the cousin of Danetta Lyles King, who was Rodney King's first wife and the mother of his daughter, Laura King. On June 7th, 1998, Byrd accepted a ride from Sean Barry, Lawrence Brewer, and John King. Barry, who was driving, was acquainted with Byrd from around town. Instead of taking Byrd home, the 3 men drove Byrd out to a remote county road out of town, beat him severely, pepper sprayed his face, urinated and defecated on him, chained him by his ankles to the pickup truck before dragging him about 3 miles on the Huff Creek Road. Brewer later claimed that Byrd's throat had been slashed by Barry before he was dragged. However, forensic evidence suggests that Byrd had been attempting to keep his head up while being dragged, and an autopsy suggests that Byrd was alive during much of the dragging.
Jesus.
Byrd died about halfway along the route of his dragging when his right arm and head were severed as his body hit a culvert. While almost all of Byrd's ribs were fractured, his brain and skull were found intact, further suggesting that he had maintained consciousness while being dragged.
Ugh.
Fucking horrific. Barry, Brewer, and King dumped the mutilated remains of Byrd's body in front of an African-American cemetery on Huff Creek Road, then drove off to a barbecue. A motorist found Byrd's decapitated remains the following morning. Along the area where Byrd was dragged, police found a wrench with the name Barry written on it, Berry, last name.
Yeah.
They also found a ladder that was inscribed with Possum, which was King's prison nickname. Police found 81 places that indicated portions of Byrd's remains. 81.
Oh.
Found 81 portions of his remains along this road.
Jesus.
Since Brewer and King were well-known white supremacists, it was determined by state law enforcement officials that the murder was a hate crime. They called upon the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, less than 24 hours after the discovery of Byrd's remains. The special agent in charge of the case, especially in charge of FBI's Houston office, said that they were assisting the case because of the extreme circumstances of the murder. King had several racist tattoos, a black man hanging from a tree, and Nazi symbols, words like Aryan pride, a patch of white supremacist inmates, a patch for a gang of white supremacist inmates known as the Confederate Knights of America, and a jailhouse letter to Brewer that was intercepted by jail officials. King expressed pride in the crime and that he had realized while committing the murder that he might have to die. Quote, regardless of the outcome of this, we made history, death before dishonor. And then he says, Sieg Heil.
Ew.
So he's a fucking, they're all white supremacists and they're all pieces of shit.
Yeah. Ew.
An officer investigating the case also testified that witnesses said that King had referenced the Turner Diaries after beating Bird. So during the trial, Sean Allen Berry, the prosecution conceded that he was not a white supremacist, but they argued that he was responsible for Bird's murder as the other men, and suggested that he might have been a thrill killer. Berry's attorney had 3 black men who knew him testify that he was not a racist, which is fucking ridiculous. Berry claimed that Brewer and King were almost entirely responsible for the crime. He said he tried to stop them from attacking Bird, but Brewer threatened to do the same to him. Brewer, however, testified that Berry had cut Bird's throat before he was tied to the truck. The jury decided that minimal evidence supported the claim. Berry was also one of the 3 to show any degree of remorse. As a result, Berry was sentenced to life in prison rather than death. As of 2020, Berry was living in a protective custody in Texas Department of Criminal Justice Ramsey Unit. He would have been eligible for parole. He will be first eligible for parole in June of 2038. By the time he will be 63 years old. Oh. He spends 23 hours a day in an 8 by 6 foot cell with 1 hour for exercise. Berry ended up getting married while in prison. Now, excuse me. John King, however, he was accused of beating Bird with a bat and then dragging him behind the pickup truck until he died. King who prior to the murder had recently been released from Texas prison, said that he had been repeatedly sexually assaulted by black inmates while in prison. He was found guilty and sentenced to death for his role in Bird's kidnapping and murder and was placed on death row in the Pulaski unit. On December 21st, 2018, King's execution by lethal injection was scheduled for April 21st, 2019. On April 22nd, April 19, his appeals to both the Texas Criminal Court Appeals and Texas Board of Pardons, and they were denied, and he was executed in Huntsville, in the Huntsville unit on April 21st, 2019. Huh. Now, the guy we're talking about, specifically Lawrence Russell Brewer, was a white supremacist who, prior to Bird's murder, had served several prison sentences for drug possession and burglary. He was paroled in 1991 after violating prison conditions in 1994. Brewer was returned to prison. According to his court testimony, he joined a white supremacist prison gang with King in order to safeguard himself from other inmates. Brewer and King became friends with the Beto unit prison. Became friends in the Beto unit prison. A psychiatrist testified that Brewer did not appear repentant for his crimes. During the trial, the prosecution labeled him as a racist psychopath. Brewer was ultimately convicted and sentenced to death. Brewer was on death row in the Pulaski unit, the same one as the last individual.
Yeah.
And he was executed in the Huntsville unit on September 21st, 2011. The day before his execution, Brewer expressed no remorse for his crime. As he told KHOU 11 News in Houston, quote, "As far as any regrets, no, I have no regrets. No, I'd do it all over again, and I'll tell you the truth." Before his execution, Brewer ordered the most unorthodox meal and just goes to prove that he was always a scumbag till the end. Brewer ordered he ordered a meal that was so out there that it ended the request of last meals in the state of Texas. Completely.
Oh.
And it's not because of what he ordered, but it's because of what happens. The meal included 2 chicken fried steaks with gravy and sliced onions, a triple patty bacon cheeseburger, a cheese omelet with ground beef, tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, and jalapenos, a bowl of fried okra with ketchup, a pound of barbecue meat with half a loaf of white bread, 3 fully loaded fajitas, a meat lover's pizza, 1 pint of Bluebell vanilla ice cream, a slab of peanut butter fudge with crusted peanuts on top, and 3 root beers.
Jesus
Requested all of that.
Christ.
So, prison officials go, all right. They go and they fucking get all of it.
Yeah.
Go make it, go buy it, whatever. A lot of times if they can make it in the house, they do.
Yeah.
Which I found out, which I thought was kind of fascinating. There was a whole documentary that I watched about a guy who I think might have been Huntsville prison, might have been this exact prison, who is an inmate, and he was like on his life, but he like is a like kind of a trustee, like works in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And he was in charge of like making last meals.
Oh.
Which I found was pretty fascinating. And he was pretty prideful about his job, which I was like, that guy's also a murderer, but I was like, that's kind of, at least you're feeling some prideful about something.
Yeah.
That's for being an asshole. Anyway, officials go and they get all this shit. They deliver it to him in this tiny little cell, because they have a cell right next to the execution chamber.
Yeah.
And he looks at the officials and goes, I'm not hungry. And he doesn't eat any of it. The meal was discarded, prompting State Senator John Whitmire to ask Texas prison officials to end the 87-year-old tradition of giving last meals to condemned inmates. The prison's agency executive director responded by stating the practice has been terminated effective immediately.
Takes one.
All it takes is one.
Ruin.
Yeah, isn't that fucking wild?
That is wild. I think I've heard that story before, though.
He gets all this food and then he's just like, I'm not hungry.
I'm okay.
Yeah. One other story that I was going to bring up was about Eileen Wuornos.
Yeah.
Which I want to do an episode on. Eileen Wuornos' case is fascinating and it's insane.
Yeah.
But for her last meal, she just requested like a cup of coffee, like black coffee. That was it.
Gross.
It's kind of a vibe, you know. And a lot of her interviews that she's done, you can like when she has something to drink, that's what she's just drinking. It's just coffee. That's what she liked. That murder, well, but you know. So, you've had all this time to think. What would your last meal be?
You're asking a lot of questions. I'm so hungry right now. It's not fair. I am so hungry. I cannot think right now.
If you had to pick right now.
Something from Giuseppe's.
From your family's restaurant?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. You were like, get the calzone. It's a large pizza folded over the top of each other. It's awesome.
It'll last like 3 days.
Yeah, too bad you're going to be executed within the hour. It's like, put that in the fridge. I'll be back for it. It's been 20 years.
It can feed me all week. Okay. Oh, it's time. She knows.
All right. Hi, Spear. Thank you for the kiss.
Did you decide it's time?
Come on.
It's time to be a baby. Come here. Oh, careful. Oh, hi.
Well, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Haunts, Graves, and Omens. What do you think, Tay?
It was pretty good. I like it.
Fascinating, but also horrifying.
Yeah.
Hi, Spear.
I like how she knows when we're getting to the end.
If you want to follow us on Instagram and TikTok, you can at HGOPodcast. When you send us an email, send us some hate mail, you can at HGOPodcast@gmail.com. If you want to follow me directly, you can on my socials at I Hunt the Haunted. I'm on Twitch and Instagram. Go check that out. Pass it off to Tay.
She licked me directly in the lips. I love you, but you are clingy. You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Lunar Thrill. It's down there. You can also follow Spirit at Spirit the Turv.
Spirit the Derv.
She got a cute face. I post sometimes. Otherwise, that's all I really got. I ain't got much else.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was a,
It was very interesting.
It was a fascinating episode of looking at the psyche of some of these people.
I'm still mad about the 2 people that just ordered a single olive.
Yeah, no, it's absurd. Don't chew on your foot on me, please. Look at the camera, please. Okay, you want to give dad kisses. That's fine. But remember to stay spooky. Hold on. Let's try that. Okay. Let's try it again. All right, pressing buttons. Remember to stay spooky.
Stay haunted.
And send him to the chair. Oh.
She agrees. Look at her.
Come on.
Are you just so sweet? Oh, hi.
All right, bye.
Okay.